Mrs. Davenport's Ghost by Frederick P Schrader and read by Christopher Halton. Dear readers, do you agree with Hamlet? Do you believe that there is more between heaven and earth than we dream of in our philosophy? Does it seem possible to you that Eliphas Levi conjured up the shade of Apollonius of Tyana, the prophet of the Magi, in a London hotel, and that the great sage William Crookes drank his tea at breakfast for months in succession, in the company of the materialized spirit of a young lady attired in white linen with a feather turban on her head? Do not laugh. Panic would seize you in the presence even of a turbaned spirit, and the grotesque spectacle would but intensify your terror. As for me, I did not laugh last night reading an account in a New York newspaper of a criminal trial that will probably end in the death penalty of the accused. It is a sad case. I shudder as I transcribe the records of the trial, from the testimony of the hotel waiter, who listened through a keyhole, and from 40 credible witnesses who testified to the same dreadful facts. What would be my feelings if I had seen the beautiful victim with the gaping wound in her breast, dipping her finger in blood to mark the brow of her murderer? About 3 o'clock in the afternoon of February 3rd, Professor Davenport and Miss Ida Sochot, a pale, delicate young girl who had submitted to his tests for years, were finishing their dinner in their hotel room. Professor Benjamin Davenport was a celebrity, but his fame was said to rest on questionable means. Spiritualists did not trust him as they trusted William Crookes or Daniel Douglas Home. Greedy and unscrupulous mediums, wrote the author of Spiritualism in America, are to blame for the bitterest attacks on our cause. When the materializations fail, they resort to trickery and fraud to save themselves. Professor Davenport belonged to these versatile mediums. Stories clung to him. Robbery in South America, cheating at cards in San Francisco, reckless use of firearms, and whispers that his wife had died of grief and abuse at his hands. Yet still, by fakery and fraud, he deceived many. Helped by his Mephisto-like face, his fiery eyes, his curved nose, his cynical mouth, his lofty prophetic tone. When the waiter made his last visit, he lingered close and overheard this conversation. "There is to be a séance this evening at Mrs. Harding's," said the professor. "Many influential people will attend, 2 or 3 millionaires. Conceal under your skirt the blonde wig and the white material the spirits usually wear." "Very well," replied Ida in a resigned tone. She paced the room. After a pause, she asked softly, "Whose spirit are you going to control this evening, Benjamin?" A loud, brutal laugh shook the chair beneath him. "Guess." "How should I know?" she said. "I am going to conjure up the spirit of my dead wife." Another burst of laughter, harsh, sinister. A cry tore from Ida's lips. She dragged herself to his feet. "Benjamin, Benjamin, don't do it," she sobbed. "Why not? They say I broke Mrs. Davenport's heart. The story damages my reputation, but it will be forgotten if her spirit should address me tenderly before many witnesses. For you will speak tenderly to me, Ida, will you not?" "No, no, you shall not do it. You must not even think it. Listen to me, for God's sake. For 4 years I have obeyed you, suffered for you. I have lied and deceived like you. I learned to imitate clairvoyant, to pierce my arms with needles, to play the ghost in parlours. I made mothers believe their sons had spoken to them from beyond. I clothed myself in shrouds and suffered torments. But this I cannot. Do not compel me to play the role of your dead wife. Spare me, Benjamin, I implore you." The professor no longer laughed. There was a crash, furniture overturned, and the sound of a skull striking the floor. The waiter, listening, guessed Davenport had struck the girl down. But he did not enter. No one had rung. That evening 40 guests gathered in Mrs. Harding's parlour. They stared at the curtain where a spirit was about to materialize. A single lantern gave more darkness than light. The fire in the grate cast ghostly shapes on the wall. Davenport was at his best. Hands without arms plucked flowers from vases. Invisible spirits played the piano. furniture wrapped in answer to questions. He even rose into the air 3 feet above the floor, holding burning coals. But the most conclusive test would be the return of Arabella Davenport. "The hour has come," cried the professor. In the twilight he stood, tall, dishevelled, demon-like, and shouted, "Appear, Arabella!" The audience held their breath. Suddenly, a piercing shriek from behind the curtain, the shriek of an expiring soul. The curtain moved, and the spirit entered. A young woman, blonde tresses, pale face, clad in whitish robes, her breast bare, a bleeding wound upon it, a knife trembling where it pierced her heart. The spectators recoiled, pressing their chairs to the wall. The medium's face turned deathly pale. He cowered, trembling. The spirit advanced, Arabella herself, the wife he had wronged. He cried out, hid his eyes, and fled behind the furniture, but she dipped her finger into the wound and marked his brow with blood. "You are my murderer! You are my murderer! You are my murderer!" Again and again the voice echoed, slow, relentless, dreadful. Davenport rolled on the floor in terror. The lights were raised, the spirit was gone. But behind the curtain, they found the body of poor Ida Soot-Schott, her features horribly distorted. The physician whispered, "Heart stroke." And that is why Professor Benjamin Davenport appeared alone in a New York courtroom to answer the charge of having murdered his wife 4 years ago in San Francisco. The end.